So I'm Jack Howell. I'm here with Kevin Walko. And Kevin, I'm delighted to have you here because I've told your story a number of times, like maybe 100 times. Somebody will come and they'll be thinking about music and they'll say, I really want to perform, but I'm not sure that I'm good enough, or they'll say, you know, my parents are really not cool with me not having a degree that doesn't have a paycheck at the end of it. So what do you think? And I'll say, well, I had a student named Kevin Walko. You can Google him. And for 3 years at Duquesne, he did nothing but complain about not having enough time to practice.
Fair.
And then his senior year, the schedule cleared out, he started practicing, and he went vertical. Every week was just like another step. And then you gave one of the best senior recitals I've ever heard at Duquesne, period. And you got in the performance program at Northwestern, and pretty much right out of school, you got your job in the Army Field Band.
Yeah, week before.
That's how I tell your story. You tell your story. What happened that year?
Well, you know, when you set the bar low enough for 3 years, anything seems exponential. Yeah, that's about it. I think I really was frustrated with the music ed situation as far as practice goes. That being said, Duquesne's music ed program was awesome. I mean, it set me up that if I were to have taught, I would have been in a great place, and that speaks a lot to the system for teachers. But yeah, for somebody that wanted to play as well, it really just didn't allow the time. So yeah, I think what you said was pretty accurate. I'll never forget the jury that I played my junior year, and I will never forget your wife's face after I played one of the movements of the Machinsky timepieces, and the question was asked of me, so I see under hours practiced 6. Is that a day? And my head just like sunk. I was like, no, that's how much I get to practice a week. And I think that pretty much summed up, how the jury went. But
well, for a music ed major, if I can get 6 hours a week, we can kind of work with that.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of things that you always had going in your favor. First place, you played jazz, so you arrived with a good working knowledge of music theory.
True.
So I never had to say, now, Kevin, what scale are we playing? So there's that.
Sure.
And there was also, you have always had an abundance of energy.
Also true.
Yeah, I've never had to. You might arrive and say, I couldn't. I had a project due, or I'm having to learn to play trombone, or whatever, right? So, for that year, technically, what did you do? You practiced more, yes, but what specifically did you practice?
Yeah, I'm super type A with that sort of stuff. And I think that it was a compilation of all of the stuff that you had given me over the years, but actually had time to dedicate to all of it, rather than in my hour for the day where I would spend, a minute on this and a couple minutes on this. It was like, I literally had a chart that touched all the things that we had worked on, and I just dedicated a lot more time to each. So long tones were a part of it. The tone technique staccato book was sectioned off into large leaps that were just supposed to be as smooth as possible, and then there were the typical close A mechanism things, right? I played Baermann kind of incessantly. I went from an hour of practice a day to probably an hour of Baermann a day, which helped tremendously. And then later on at Northwestern, it was an hour of Baermann on bass clarinet a day, and just focusing so much on altissimo stuff.
So that's good that you brought that up, because the one thing that you conquered that's a difficult thing to conquer was a biting issue. Because I remember your freshman year, you couldn't play a high D without squeaking.
Yeah, yep, you are.
So did you overcome that with anything in particular, or just through sheer work?
I think it was a combination of taking more mouthpiece, and then at some point I made a shift to harder reeds,
Yeah.
which I
I
think.
just realized that this is, let me turn this off. Okay, so harder reeds.
Yeah. So I switched to harder reeds, which, I mean, if you have a biting problem and you continue biting with harder reeds, you lose your bottom lip, I think, at some point. But I also started playing with I take a little bit of a rubber glove. Some people, use plastic wrap or whatever, Ezo, and I put that over the bottom. So I think that is a little bit of a crutch for the pressure, but also let me play on harder reeds without killing my bottom lip. And taking a little bit more mouthpiece, I think, was ultimately the most helpful thing I probably could have done.
So did you actually stop biting, or did you just make a setup that would let you bite?
I think there's probably, I think the last thing that I did was I practiced more. At some point, somebody, one of the students at Northwestern said that what they did was they always thought about pushing the mouthpiece into their top teeth, and I think that actually helped quite a bit. So I think I probably put a Band-Aid over the biting for a while, and then when I really started focusing on doing that, that changed things for the better.
Yeah. So then, tell me about your Northwestern audition. What, did you mostly use reps that you'd already practiced?
So at Northwestern, they did require Mozart Concerto, which we had worked on, so that was already in the pocket. I did play 2 movements of Poulenc Sonata, and they required something unaccompanied, so I used Osborne's Rhapsody, and that was pretty much it. I don't remember playing any scales or anything else. I had already taken a couple lessons on the side with Steve Cohen before I went out, so he was kind of familiar with me.
Yeah, I remember that.
Before that, but yeah, that was the main part of the rep.
Good.
Yeah.
So 2 years at Northwestern?
Yes.
What about your 2 years at Northwestern? What did you have to do beyond what you did at Duquesne to get to the point where you're getting into the field band?
That's a loaded question. I think so. One of the most helpful things was that Lori Bloom required all of the master students there to take bass class, and I had not had any experience with bass clarinet before. So being the bass clarinetist in the field band, I mean, that's what I do exclusively there. So that was really helpful. I think that you mentioned my jazz background, but also auxiliaries are just such a world-opening thing for winning a job. I think not everybody can do them well, so to be able to do that is just a great foot in the door. If somebody needs a sub for something and you can do that well, then it expands what you're able to do. But
as a former personnel manager, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was really helpful. But you just said I kind of went vertical in my senior year of Duquesne, and it was just 2 extra years of not having the music ed load and being able to play. I mean, I think at some point I was probably practicing 6 or 8 hours a day on top of rehearsals, and it was just, I always think about that, when some athlete says, well, the baseball bat is really just an extension of my person, and I don't know that I really understood that for a long time, and then at Northwestern, at some point the clarinet felt that way to me, such that, it was just always with me, and I would take my 5 minutes in between classes to run in and achieve just practice one line of an excerpt and make some goal out of it, so that it just felt like it was always ready to go. It was as the same as singing, right?
I've got a question for you about practicing long hours, because while that works for some people, and while I've done 8-hour days myself, I remember before my New Zealand audition, I went to New Zealand for a week and practiced for 8 hours a day. But it's also possible with that much time to kind of lose the mental focus and for it to become corrosive. How did you, was that just not an issue, or did you have to work at that specifically?
I always felt kind of behind, or like the runt or something of the grad students at Northwestern. So I think it was a lot of just, I didn't want to sound like the runt anymore, and it was just out of like sheer competition almost. So
you're always improving or always have an improvement in mind. You're never simply repeating.
yeah, I really, I kind of took on the workload of always saying yes to everything as well, whether it was contemporary ensemble or somebody just wanted a chamber piece on a recital or something.
Yeah.
So I never felt like I had enough time to learn all the music that I needed to learn. And so it didn't, the repetition aspect of it really just didn't feel terribly daunting.
There's one other thing, and I watched the podcast you did with Sam, where you were talking about preparing for your audition, and I was really struck by the similarities to my own audition preparation, because when I got ready to audition for my job here, I'd already been through a lot of disappointing auditions, and my attitude was to leave no stone unturned. I was entirely okay with the possibility of not getting the job, but I was not okay waking up the next morning and not being able to look in the mirror and know that I did my best. So why don't you talk a little bit about all the things that you did getting ready for the field band audition?
The field band audition, I think one of the most helpful things, one of the most different things, I guess, I did for that comparatively to anything else was performance practice and criticism is a class at Northwestern where you have a different faculty member that comes in and is kind of like the guest masterclass artist for the week. And it might be a tuba player, it might be a clarinetist, whoever. You play a few times out of the semester. But your audience is mixed, right? It's not the clarinet studio class, it's everybody. So to play something and have a different set of professional ears was just tremendously helpful. And I think it allowed the getting rid of the clarinet excuses, like, well, my low E is flat, and at some point, Mallory Thompson was the guest clinician. She said, nobody cares if your low E is flat, they just want it to be in tune, and I think that sort of mentality changed a lot for me because I made a lot less excuses and I was listening just as objectively as possible, recording myself constantly. I think recording myself was just, I did it every day.
Yeah.
At night,
Yes.
I would try and run the list, record it, and then listen back before I went to bed, make a whole bunch of notes, and then the next day was just, the first hour was only practicing the things that did not go as well.
That's the one-shot drill.
Yeah, it's, tremendously helpful. At some point, I remember having in lessons with Steve Cohen to not verbalize what he was about to say to me, and it just got, I don't know, near the end of my second year, it just got to the point where I knew what he was going to say all the time. And so if I was always listening to my recordings at night with his ears in mind, it was like I was getting 7 lessons a week rather than 1, and it just got to the point where I could do, I was fixing all the things all the time, and it helped a lot.
So you went through you got the field band.
When I left your hands at Duquesne, it was only 2 years between feeling like, well, I'm going to audition for 3 schools I don't think I can get into, to winning a job. So I think I was pretty excited about it. Plus, I've been fortunate to play with a lot of really great musicians, but the field band is full of exceptional players.
Yeah.
So I still, some days, especially in my chamber group, have to pinch myself a little bit, like, somebody pays me to do this for a living, this is great. So.
Well, I still have your letters from basic training. And I gotta say, man, that sounded pretty rough.
Yeah, at times.
Yet another crucible experience. But, I don't know how much we really need to talk about it, but we should talk about some, just the opportunity that you have in the field band. Because playing in this orchestra is awesome. But I don't have your benefits. I don't have your pension, And Pittsburgh Symphony's not going to put my kid through college, So what's the best thing about being in the field band?
The best thing? Well, I mean, yeah, the benefits are outstanding. As you said, at 10 years you can transfer the GI Bill. So my kid who's 5 will not pay for college, and books are covered, and the housing stipend is there too. So that's, it's just like a nice little bonus. The healthcare for life is solid. The pension is obviously, I've got 4.5 years until I hit that, so that's amazing. But every job has its ups and downs, and if I had to pick the best thing about the field band, it's the audience change comparatively to playing in the Pittsburgh Symphony. So I think your job is amazing. I love the orchestra, but you play generally for the same audience every night, right? You play in the same hall unless you're on some European tour or something. Whereas the field band, we play 100 concerts a year in a different hall, ranging from high school gyms, where we are the biggest thing that has come to the Nowhereville, Kansas auditorium within 2 hours, in probably a year. Or you can see the whites of people's eyes. I'll never forget, I was playing the Artie Shaw Concerto in a gym, and this 2-year-old broke free from her dad's grip and was literally charging at me as I was playing something. And where else do you have that experience? But you're also making these people's days that they just don't, they don't have this here. Yeah. So we get to play in great halls, but we also get to do that. And you just feel like you reach a whole different subset of people where you wouldn't in a job like this, and I love that.
How many times have you played the Artie Shaw Concerto?
That is another great thing about it. When we get to solo, a tour might have us play 6 to 15 times, so I've probably played the Artie Shaw Concerto 15 times or so, which is cool.
What's the best tour you ever had?
Oh, best tour. I love the West Coast. The tours where we fly to LA and then drive to Seattle and fly home.
Well, the main thing I wanted to get was to just get your side of the story, because I use you fairly often as a reference for what can be done. Talking to the student, I'm not saying that this is you, but it can be done. If you care enough and you're willing to do the work, it can be done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The other thing that I think is I don't think I ever saw you getting in your own way. That there were times where you were frustrated, but you were never. I didn't perceive you as a particularly anxious person. You were always like one foot in front of the other. Is that just you, or is that a parental thing, or?
I think that's probably just me.
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry, I don't have any great information.
Be like that.
Yeah.
Well, now the thing, and you're only the third actual interview I've done, but is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
I feel like a lot of people, when we do outreach, we reach out to a lot of musicians like yourself when we'll be in the area, and I feel like there are a lot of musicians in the orchestral world that are not interested in having us in front of their students, us being the field band. And I get that if you have an orchestral program, like Rice has like an orchestral studies program, it's not just performance, that maybe you're not interested in having professional musicians, but I don't really understand that. I think a lot of people have a stigma against military band musicians, as far as maybe it's just a performance level, like they have their nose up in the air, like we are the, whatever symphony, and the field band will not impress our students or something. And I'm always a little surprised when we get
I don't feel that way at all.
That's great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, we've gotten you into Duquesne a couple times.
Yeah, true. Duquesne's always been great about that, and it's not even school to school. It seems person to person, and I would just encourage everybody, all teachers out there, to just give their students the opportunity to hear whatever professional musicians sound like, so that if you don't think we're good enough, let us change your mind, and just let your students ask the question. Don't put the bar up in front of them and say, they're not worth their time because I don't think that they're worth your time.
And beware of the options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I don't have to edit this in. If you feel like subscribing, that would be cool.